Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Audubon Society of Central Arkansas's monthly meeting. I'm Dan Scheinman, the Vice President of the chapter, and I have the pleasure tonight to introduce our two speakers. We have Chris Swanson and Paul Provence with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Chris Swanson is the project leader for Central Arkansas National Wildlife Refuge Complex. He is a 20-year veteran of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He has served as project leader at the Idaho Fish and Wildlife Office for the past few years, where he provided leadership in the delivery of landscape level conservation through implementation of the Endangered Species Act. Chris previously worked in the Southeast region within the National Wildlife Refuge System program in various roles in Atlanta, Georgia, and in the field in Tennessee, Mississippi. He earned a BS, MS, and Ph.D. in Wildlife and Fisheries Sciences from South Dakota State University. Paul Provence is the Deputy Project Leader for Central Arkansas National Wildlife Refuge Complex. He has his BS in Wildlife and Fisheries Biology from Louisiana State University and began his career in 2000 working for the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. He then went on to work for the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and joined the service in 2010 as a biologist for the Southeast Louisiana Refuge Complex, and later served as a biologist for the Central Louisiana Refuge Complex. In 2015, he returned to his home state of Arkansas to serve as the refuge manager for Bald Knob, Holla Bend, and Logan Cave. And tonight they're going to share with us how they go about managing one of the hottest hotspots in Arkansas, your favorite and mine, Bald Knob National Wildlife Refuge. Take it away, Paul and Chris.
Well, great.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Maybe I'll kick things off, but Paul is the real expert here on Bald Knob and just a real leader in our field and all things waterfowl conservation and migratory bird management. So he's gonna do the heavy lifting today. But I just want to start off by saying how much I appreciate, and Paul does, the opportunity to talk with you all tonight. You all are true friends. The work that this group does and your love of birds is just so aligned with what we love. And that's connecting with the public. It's providing opportunities to enjoy the outdoors on our refuges and really just soak in all the great things that birds have to offer. And I think both for Paul and I, that's where our love is too. It's for birds. And we just love meeting many of you. I recognize some faces and some names here. So I've seen you either at Bald Knob or maybe I met you even at Holla Bend. I see some folks that I met over there on different events. So it's just really great to see you. I'm getting an internet thing, but I hope you can hear me still okay.
Yeah, you're coming in fine.
I just wanted to say, at this complex, Bald Knob is one of probably two of the most important waterfowl refuges, not only in Arkansas, but in the whole southeastern United States. And beyond waterfowl, it's shorebirds and it's raptors and it's neotropical migratory birds and it's wading birds. And what we do at Bald Knob and Cache River and then other places like Holla Bend and Big Lake and Wapanocca and even Logan Cave in our complex, which is more of a T&E, an endangered species type of refuge, is really manage those places for the public, for your benefit. We do it because we love working with people who love us. And that is this crowd, that is you all. And Paul's going to get on a lot of the details about how we manage water, why we do that, why we do things at different time of the year, and how we work with not only folks like private folks who live in the community who help us manage that water, but with our staff as well. So Paul, can I kick it over to you and you can really unveil the curtain, so to speak, about how we do things at Bald Knob?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. The man behind the curtain now. I'm like the Wizard of Oz here. Like Chris said, it's great to see all you guys. Met some of you out on the refuge. I saw Mr. Glenn White's on with us. I wanted to ask him if he didn't mind if he got a new vehicle. I thought I saw him in a red one the other day. Is that right?
Yes, I did. Got a
Yeah.
red one.
You traded in the Acura, huh?
Yeah, 300,000 miles on it. Had to.
Yeah, I saw you go by and I said, "Ah, look, you got a new car. How about that?" So Mr. Glenn's one of our regulars. We get to see him a lot. I see Mr. Allen up there. I think the last time I saw Mr. Allen was maybe at Holla Bend a while back. I'm not for sure. It was maybe after one of our not so good events, a flood or something, perhaps. I'm not sure, but anyway, nice to see everyone. I can kind of jump right into it, like Chris was saying, and go over kind of what we do at Bald Knob and why, and kind of how we facilitate it. We are a cooperative farm, and through that farming operation, we're able to deliver the resources for just tons and tons, just hundreds of thousands over the year, millions of waterfowl each year. In a nutshell, the refuge doesn't receive or exchange any cash payments. What we receive in what would be a rental payment or a crop share for a typical private individual, we retain in the field for the birds. So we keep 25% of the rice share. And let me pull up a map real quick. I'm going to share my screen if I can, and I'll just kind of just give you something to look at other than me while I'm doing this. Let me see. All right. Can you guys see a map?
Yep, that worked.
All right, good. Okay. So we'll go to the 2022. This is from last year. So, well, let me see. I'm sorry. I've got too many. I apologize. Like I said, my first time on a Zoom here. Here we go. All right. So it's kind of small on my screen. Can everybody read it okay? Can you see it?
It's small, so tell us what's what.
Okay. All right. So everything that's got a particular color to it is an individual field, and the red indicates this is for the 22 year, and I'll show you the 23 year as well. Red is what we left out for native vegetation or moist soil management. Yellow would be what we put in cultivated in rice. And then the green would be in soybeans. And then this little area in the middle is what everybody here is the most fond of. That would be our shorebird fields. And they'll rotate. If you can see my cursor moving, this light blue and this yellow field, those two rotate. They'll flip-flop each year from one year to the next. It'll be 1 year it'll be in rice, 1 year it'll be be held for shorebirds. So at the end of the year, towards the end of the year, we will go back out. Now there is some difference between what you see here, and you wouldn't necessarily pick it up between these two screens, but this was our plan at the beginning of the year, and this was the realized the result once the season got kicked off, where now the white is moist soil and the striped part is rice, and the green is soybeans, and then these kind of blue purplish colors that you see would be parts of those rice fields that we retained, unharvested crops to feed the migratory ducks and waterfowl that come down each year. So that's just kind of a 30,000 foot view of what we do from 1 year to the next, or what we did in 22. I'm sorry. So then in 23, that's not the one I wanted to show you. Here we go. Oh, so right now this is where we are for 23, and I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and you wouldn't pick it up necessarily again, but pretty much everything that was in rice this year is in soybeans, and what was in soybeans last year is in rice. And then this light blue here in the middle would be our shorebird field that flip-flopped from last year. And then I will show you this crazy looking map with all these dots and stars and symbols on it. So what this map is every water control structure that we have on the refuge. And the unique thing about Bald Knob And our water delivery system is it's 100% surface water. We don't have any deep wells. We're not pulling water out of an aquifer. We get all of our water from the Little Red River. And if you can follow my cursor here, it's kind of tracing. This is the Little Red River over here on the west side of the refuge. This, well, there's a red square under a black dot that indicates there's a pump there. So we got a big river pump, pumps water out of the river, delivers water across the refuge through a series of canals. And then each one of these individual icons indicates some form of a water control structure. Everyone that looks like a cross is a screw gate that we open or close to put water in each field individually. And then we've got we've got hydraulic gates, just this plethora of structures, whether they're boarded structures or screw gates or hydraulic structures, but it's very intensely managed. It's an ingenious method of water delivery and very conservation oriented. There's even an element of tailwater recovery, that some of the water that flows through these fields can get picked up and recycled through back at the to be put back on. Instead of it just necessarily all going out to the river, they can capture some of that water and as it flows through and redistribute it across the parts of the farm. So that's just kind of everything in a nutshell, but I know what everybody tends to focus on at times would be our shorebird management. And let me zoom in on this map, if I can figure out how do I do that. Hold on one
Hey,
second.
Paul, while you're zooming in, could I jump in just to
Please.
add to fill some space? But
Yep.
One of the unique things that goes on in the southeast region of the US is this type of what we call cooperative farming. And it's really designed to be all about birds. You know, you might be wondering, well, why would there be so many other fields that really, aren't necessarily left for the birds as forage or as, a part of their diet or for their consumption? And it's because it's very efficient for us from a business model standpoint to not have all of our own farming equipment. If we had to go out and buy tractors and discs and plows and all of the equipment that we would need to produce the rice and some of the other crops that are really important for waterfowl and the other migratory birds, it would really not serve the government in the best way from using our budget that the public gives us. And what we do, like Paul said, is we work with a local farmer, and his benefit is that he or she is able to keep this share of the crops to their benefit, but then we keep the refuge share, like Paul mentioned earlier. And that's a really important part. That's where the refuge purposes are fulfilled through this cooperative farming method. And that all actually relates to a much broader plan called the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. And if you've read about it at any time in your life, you'll know that there's joint ventures throughout North America, and we're lucky to have the Lower Mississippi Valley joint venture here that we're part of in Arkansas, and states like Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, even South Missouri, Indiana, Kentucky are part of that same area. And we've agreed as a conservation community between National Wildlife Refuges, between states, between other groups that manage public lands, that we want to meet different goals to provide enough forage, especially for waterfowl. These places were bought in a big part for ducks, and with that, we've actually got allocations, they're called, of how much standing crop, usually rice, that we need to produce to meet the larger goals within the Lower Mississippi Valley region. And that all contributes to the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. So it's really a grand design that is stepped down locally here at Bald Knob. And this may be one of the most special places in the Southeast because of this water delivery system that Paul is talking about. And Paul, I'll kick it back to you, but just a little more of the why behind, how come we do this type of work here on the ground?
Yeah, Chris, you said that really well, zoomed out even beyond Bald Knob into the bigger picture, which and somebody had just chatted in how many farmers we have one farmer manages the entire farm. What was I got distracted by the what was that, Chris? What did you want me to speak to? I'm sorry.
No, I think it was just transitioning back to you. You were going to zoom in on the shorebird fields to really look at, what this water delivery system does within that part of the area.
If I might just add one thing about the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. That plan is sophisticated enough that they're down to the level of figuring out how many calories we need to grow to support so many ducks. So this is a highly scientific and sophisticated management plan that's scattered all over this area, and a lot of hard work and good science went into it.
And for everyone's education, Alan Mueller used to work for Fish and Wildlife Service,
Yes.
so he should know.
That's right. These days they used to be called duck I think they're duck energy days now. They were
That's
duck
right.
use days, but now they're considered duck energy days. And so an acre of rice will produce X number of calories that can support X number of ducks. And I don't know those numbers right off the top of my head, but we produce in the millions of duck energy days annually on Bald Knob, as well as cash all across our complex. But that's just our way of quantifying how much food are we able to provide for in numbers of ducks. And it's a way to kind of look at the amount of food feeds X number of ducks. And that gives us some quantifiable goals to shoot for. And so to just kind of wrap that up to
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go right ahead.
And not to jump in, but Alan, as a former employee and just really smart, I met Alan over at Holla Bend. Really appreciate his point that, this plan is based in science. It was actually developed coming on the heels of very low duck populations through the late 1970s and early 80s, when basically the conservation community in North America came together and said, we've got to do something for waterfowl. And so from the breeding grounds and the prairies throughout Canada, even Alaska, all the way down into Mexico, we live and breathe off of this plan. And for us, the reason we do all of this at the end of the day for ducks is to return those ducks back to the breeding grounds in the best condition possible, because the science shows that the better condition the ducks are in, the more fat, the better condition that they're in, the more eggs, the better they are to then produce young. So back to Paul and the shorebird story that lies within.
Right. So, our focus is primarily on waterfowl. That's kind of our bread and butter of management. But one thing that is certainly a priority every year and something we really enjoy doing are providing these mud flats that you guys enjoy coming to view the shorebirds on every year. And I had a question about where are the shorebird fields. And so I'll zoom out. Some of you, I don't know if everyone has been to Bald Knob, but I know several of you have. So I'll just kind of bring you in on this map. So up here is the office, and this is Coal Chute Road running north and south. And then these are the grain bins, the granary that everyone refers to. That's kind of dead center of the refuge. And then just to the west, these fields here for this year are going to be being set aside for shorebirds. Last year, it was the fields just to the east. And so the way we accomplish this every year is through the farming program. The fields that are in blue right now were in rice last year. So those fields were were harvested, or part of them were harvested. And then after the annual harvest across the refuge every year, then through the cooperative farming contract, the farmer puts water back on those portions of the refuge that we retain for our share of the refuge of the crop that we're retaining, for the waterfowl forage, the standing rice crop. So that field in blue last year was a 150 acres of rice. We reflooded that artificially last year because it was fairly dry, so we pumped it up. But then we kept the water on that field all year. And then, as everybody knows, we got just tons of rain this spring. So we've boarded that field up to the maximum, and we've got probably 3 feet maybe across that field right now. And the purpose of that is to let that water stay on that field all summer long. And all that leftover stubble, all that vegetation that was left over from last year's rice field, is now a food source for invertebrates. And so as the invertebrates, and it's everything from crawfish to bloodworms and any little critter that a duck would eat, or a shorebird would forage for, is feasting on that decaying vegetation right now. So as the summer progresses and gets, I think it's usually about the last week of August, we try to time this for when the peak migration of the shorebirds are coming through. But late in the summer, we're going to start drawing that water down in those fields to expose that mud flat. And that freshly exposed mud flat, it's void of vegetation. It's teeming with invertebrates, and we want that to be available for those shorebirds when they make their fall migration. So they're showing up to Bald Knob, and they've got a dinner table. Hopefully, if everything goes right and we're successful, they've got this dinner table of just ideal habitat and foraging habitat and just tons of food available for them. And we get some added shorebird habitat scattered throughout the refuge each year, depending on kind of what Mother Nature hands us. If you think about where we are right now, though, for the spring migration, and a lot of you guys have been out there lately, we had lots of spring rains. The water's starting to fall off now. We've had lots of yellow legs, and I think there was and everything from pelicans to, you guys can tell me what they were, the little peeps, the small ones, have been taking advantage of that exposed mud flat that's showing up as the spring rains and spring floods start to recede, and that mud flat's exposed for the spring migration. So they're headed north for their breeding grounds, and we'll hold that water on those fields until they're ready to come back in the fall. So that's kind of that, if that explains it.
I have a question for you, Paul.
Absolutely.
Would you consider managing more shorebird fields, like taking another one out and having 2 of them each year in the fall?
We have we've discussed it before. Part of the challenge in it is where these fields are located and whether or not you can hold water on them. These right here work with the hydrology of the surrounding fields, that you're able to kind of do this right here. Yes, in a I guess in a perfect world, we do a lot more of it, but we haven't done it yet, so sometimes we get lucky with Mother Nature and we get that extra, but for now, it's just what we have. So.
And Paul, we see sometimes with our harvested rice or even soybean areas that as they get wet or saturated and, they're partially flooded, the shorebirds, depending on if they're here or migrating or using those places, depending on the weather and depending on the time of the year. Like right now, if you go out and, you're starting to see birds use those areas too, that may not have been our traditional shorebird field. So it does break itself up throughout the year in that way.
Yeah, Mother Nature, the spring's a little easier than the fall. Holding water anywhere in August is a challenge. But like right now, there's hundreds of acres of habitat for the spring migration that we didn't necessarily manage for, but it's just a result of leftover farming, holding water where we can, and then just these birds are certainly timing their migration with the rain and moving along and following that edge of that habitat. So we do get a lot more as far as intensely managed for that fall. That's where we are right now. We've knocked around a few ideas about some other spots though, Dan.
So along those lines, are you doing monitoring of any of the birds to make sure you're meeting your goals in terms of waterfowl production?
Well, from a waterfowl standpoint, absolutely. We're doing counts. We have a staff biologist, Richard Crossett, that does biweekly waterfowl counts every year, and it's part of a bigger. We participate in a midwinter survey every year, which is a flyway wide survey that normally it's an aerial survey, but we're doing ground counts. And Richard, he would have been great probably to have on our call tonight, but he monitors moist soil production in these fields that we don't produce crop in, and we get those duck energy days, those seed estimations on those fields that have natural vegetation in them. And then he also, when he does his biweekly counts, he records and monitors which fields they're using, and we can kind of tie all that together, and sometimes it's fairly obvious that these unharvested rice fields are going to hold more birds, and fields that are in sanctuary. That's one thing I hadn't even brought up, this discussion about sanctuary. But yeah, we monitor all that really closely. We've got years and years of data of how the ducks are responding to our efforts, for sure.
Are there other places in the Central Arkansas Refuge System where you're managing for shorebirds as well as waterfowl?
No, we don't have any specific shorebird, not like we're doing at Bald Knob, not on the complex. This is the center of the universe for that operation. But I don't have the map in front of me, but I can kind of point out, like, Bald Knob allows hunting every year, waterfowl hunting, but it's primarily the northern part of the refuge. And as everyone that's kind of familiar with it knows, and this doesn't show the whole refuge, but pretty much south of this line that runs east and west, right north of the granary, in the winter is all waterfowl sanctuary. So this is the 23 map. So if all things considered, we get the rice planted in these areas, and all this sanctuary will have rice in these fields, and they'll be undisturbed. There's no entry, no public entry, no hunting, nothing that no disturbances are allowed in there from November 15th until February 28th, roughly March the 1st every year. So we provide, not only are we providing the food resource, but we're also providing that undisturbed habitat. And I did catch a little, I heard you guys chatting right before I came on, and talked about Coal Chute Road was south of the granary still closed. Well, all this ground in the south part of the refuge is flooded. It's starting to go down. We're hoping to be able to get some roads open here pretty soon, as early as tomorrow. But it's a pretty dynamic system that we go a lot of times where we were last fall from just a terrible drought to just completely inundated and completely flooded. So
that kind of condition must frustrate you as much as it frustrates us birders, the kind of extreme flooding that blocks access for you to get back to parts of the refuge, so you can't do the work you want to do.
it does, but if it were not for that fact, we probably wouldn't have it as a refuge. That's part of the reason that we obtain some of the lands we do, is because they're difficult places to farm or to maintain to start with. So they end up going up for sale, and fortunately we were able to buy it. And yes, it is frustrating at times, but at the same time, it's a natural cycle. There's lots of habitat back there. Just because we can't get back there and fool with it doesn't mean it's not being utilized by lots and lots of wildlife. So it's just part of that cycle, and that's part of life on Bald Knob Refuge.
Excellent answer. Thank you. Also, I was wondering then, what other kind of habitat management do you do besides the work you've already described for ducks and shorebirds?
Sure. Well, let me see. Forest management is a big component of what we do. If you look at the entirety of Bald Knob, it was, if you can imagine, back in the 50s and 60s, it was completely forested. And beginning in the late 60s, 70s, and through the 80s, it was almost completely cleared. And it's about 15,000 acres in total. And almost all that acreage was cleared. And now, to date, we've reforested about 7,000 acres on Bald Knob. And sorry, my family just walked in. Excuse me. Hey guys. Yeah, forest management. So we've got 7,000 acres of reforested lands that are existing in anywhere from 15 to 20-year-old stands to 25, pushing 30-year stands now. So that would be kind of one of the big features of what we've done there at Bald Knob, is that just massive reforestation effort. Now, almost half of our land base is reforested at Bald Knob.
Paul, this is Cindy Franklin. I've got a question about the relationship with the farmer. Is the person who farms, or the family who farms that, have they been doing that for a long time, or does that turn over every 2 or 3 years?
No, we are fortunate enough to have a really high quality farmer. It's Michael Ochsner is our farmer. He's been, Bald Knob was established in 93. I believe. And I think Michael's been there for almost that entire time. Well, no, I take that back. It was farmed for a few years by the former landowner, and then it turned over to a second group. Bald Knob was Huntsman Road runs through Bald Knob. It was owned by the Huntsman family. It then was acquired by the Hancock Insurance Agency. And there was a family, I believe their last name was Bachman, that farmed it probably in the late 90s. And then when the refuge was established and the Bachmans were no longer farming it, we got the Ochsners, Michael Ochsner. He farms it now, and excellent farmer, knows that he's farming on a refuge and respects that, and just does a really good job for us. And we're really, really fortunate to have our farmer that we have. It's so complicated too. One thing that I don't think a farmer without the knowledge of the hydrology of Bald Knob could just step onto the farm and be very successful. It's very complicated. There's miles and miles of canals and the delivery system. And like I said, if you go back to that map, that's a lot of structures to understand how they work And if you want to successfully farm a particular field, you need to understand how that water gets there. When you open this structure, what does it do? You know, so rice farmers are deal in real small increments when they're farming rice, and a lot of precision is required. You know, if you overtop a rice field with water, you can easily destroy a crop. Or if you short it, you know, it doesn't get the proper amount of water at the right time, you can devastate a crop as well. So having a farmer that's been with us for a long time is a real benefit, just due to the complexity of how the water delivery system works on the refuge.
And
Oh.
has that model been replicated in other areas in the wildlife refuge system?
Pretty much. I've worked on several. I worked on a cooperative farming refuge in central Louisiana. I was there 3 or 4 years, excuse me, and we retained the same farmer the whole time I was there as well. You know, farmers don't exist everywhere. The availability of good farmers is like the availability, I guess, of any highly skilled person. There's just not one on every corner ready to take over a spot. So when you find a good farmer that you can trust and you've got a good relationship with, and you just try to stick with what's working. It's you know, it's a business for them as well. It's their livelihood, and they work really hard to feed their families this way and produce and help us with our goals as a refuge. You know, is they can just go hand in hand.
Paul and Chris, this is Karen Holiday. Can you talk a
Hey.
little bit? Hey, yes, we'll be seeing you in August for my field trip.
I hope so.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little more about the sanctuary goals that you have, and also hunting restrictions, and does that change each year?
No, like I said, the sanctuary, I wish I could probably find a map, but I won't take the time. But pretty much the whole southern part of the refuge is in sanctuary, and it goes into effect November 15th every year, and stays sanctuary until about the 1st of March. That doesn't change. We don't flip-flop the sanctuary into the hunting area or allow hunting in the sanctuary on every other year or anything like that. Now there are duck hunters out there that would certainly like that to be the case and would like to get into the sanctuary and hunt ducks, because that's where we hold the lion's share of our birds every year. But no, it's the same every year. And as far as the hunting that goes on in the remaining parts of the refuge, it's hunting till noon only. You have to stop hunting by noon. You can't enter the refuge before 4 a.m. But we do allow it 7 days a week during the regular legal duck season.
And the other question I have is, we see a lot of fishermen out there. Is there anything in particular or anything exotic that they're fishing for?
No, I don't think there's anything exotic. They're, primarily they're catching crappie and bass and catfish. There's a few folks that'll maybe catch like some drum or some gar or things like that. I did have a guy call last year. He was wanting to catch a snakehead, which I don't know enough about snakehead, the snakehead fish to even hardly comment on, but he was his goal was to catch a snakehead on a fly rod, I think, and he called to ask if I knew if we had any snakehead, and I said I did not know, but he was certainly welcome to try. So nothing exotic though.
Well, there was a rumor that there was an alligator there a few years ago.
Well, I've been there for 8 years and I haven't seen one. I have had people very confident that the tracks they saw were those of an alligator. But beaver track looks a lot like an alligator track. So there could have been an alligator there. I'm not saying there wasn't. I haven't seen one. So I won't confirm or deny there's ever been an alligator at Bald Knob.
And one last question. Tell us about the river otters. We see them periodically.
Well, as far as that goes, I think they're just one of the other wildlife that have made their home there, with the river being there, and we have a fair amount of permanent water. As you guys are aware, if you get around the refuge, there's a few places that will hold water year round. And so we're just providing that habitat, and they're taking advantage of it. But yeah, we've got there's healthy population of beaver. There's a few nutria that are showing up from time to time, and river otter, and there's bobcat and foxes, and there's tons of white-tailed deer. Every once in a while you'll hear a quail, and then lots of raccoons and skunks and possums and armadillos, anything you can imagine. We've got it out there. So even had a couple of years ago, we had a black bear cub run through the parking lot. So I can confirm we've had a black bear on the refuge as well.
So what role does Chris play? I know he's new to the refuge. So
He's
how
the
does he
boss.
complement what you're doing?
Chris is the boss. So you want to, so I'm the deputy project leader. Chris is the project leader. And Chris, you can explain that better than I can.
Sure, it's a very fair question, and I'm very lucky to serve this group of employees that works on the Central Arkansas National Wildlife Refuge Complex. So 6 national wildlife refuges. We've got about, well, if you count our law enforcement officers, we got about 12 employees right now. And with that, my job is to not only grow and develop our employees, but to make kind of the big picture decisions on all things refuge administration across all of those places. That includes, working with Paul on making sure that, we are contributing to the different conservation plans that are out there, whether it's, waterfowl plans or shorebird plans. We work, my role, one of the key areas I do is partnerships and trying to work with especially our state, local partners like you all, our tribal partners, various groups, communities that really care about the work that we do. And then with that, try to really be an advocate for the great things that the refuge system does and provides to the local communities, to the wildlife that we are entrusted in stewarding, and really trying to handle complex issues more than anything. So you can only imagine with having 150 or so thousand acres of public lands under these different refuges, that there's lots of complex challenges that come up over time, and those get on my desk most of the time. So things like maybe we have an issue where we're trying to alleviate a flooding concern that happens in a specific place of a refuge that's not intended, and maybe a different landowner next to us is also receiving that same challenge. That's when we'll try to make sure that we can manage the refuge appropriately so it doesn't impact landowners adversely wherever we can. And there's just a myriad of other concerns the public brings up. Those are generally things that I handle if they're in bigger scale, but Paul also takes a lot of that same type of work given his role now and serving the entire complex. So I guess it's not as easy to describe as I thought it might be, but there never seems to be enough time in the day. That's for sure. And never a shortage on challenges.
Yeah, and I've got a slide here. I'm going to pull up if I can make this. I'll show you just real quick. Dan, you said there was a way I could do this. Maybe, can you see this PowerPoint right here? Are you guys seeing a?
No, you've got to go back to share screen and then select your PowerPoint.
Oh, I thought I did share it. Okay, here we go. Sorry.
If I can just butt in again for a minute, one thing that Chris said, you may not have caught it, 6 refuges, 12 employees. So they're stretched really thin and do a great job, especially considering that sort of massive handicap built in.
Right. So am I sharing my screen now?
Not yet.
Yeah, let me just say, Paul, that, you know, Paul is being really, really humble on this call because
There we go, share.
he is a true expert for Bald Knob and this landscape for the wildlife that are entrusted. And he and actually one other maintenance worker who's just a real expert, such a knowledgeable, just seasoned employee who knows this place like the back of his hand, basically manage all of Bald Knob. So 2 people, I mean, we wish we had, 10, to really do it as best we could, but we do the best we can. And that's at all of the different refuges. We have some staff, we'd love to have more, but we do the best we can with what we have.
All right. So is my screen up now? Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just because kind of topic came up. So I don't know what the current count is. Chris, how many refuges do we have nationwide?
We're getting close to 600. I think but the last time I saw it was around 567 or so.
Okay.
Alan or someone else may have the most precise and latest estimate.
So, on the screen is just every black dot represents a National Wildlife Refuge across the country. And you kind of see they're a little bit focused on flyways. You've got a concentration on the West Coast. This is the breeding grounds of the Dakotas up here. And then as you get on down the Mississippi Flyway, Arkansas and Louisiana, you get a little tighter cluster. And then we've got a lot on the East Coast. And those are primarily migratory bird waterfowl flyways. And then in Arkansas, these are the 10 refuges that we have in the state, 6 of which are contained within our complex. And so just the National Wildlife Refuge System, this number is off since I made the slide. Some of the refuges are larger now, but 375,000 acres that we manage in the state for the National Wildlife Refuge System. You got, as you can see, the Bald Knob, Big Lake, Cache River, Holla Bend, Wapanocca, and Logan Cave. Those are ours. And then this is where everything's located. We got Alan, Mr. Allen said 12 employees and 6 refuges, and you got Logan Cave all the way over here almost in Oklahoma, and you have Big Lake and Wapanocca almost in Memphis, Tennessee, Mississippi area. So we're covering the whole northern half of the state. And then White River is here, and then you got the South Arkansas Refuge Complex down south with Pond Creek, Felsenthal, and Overflow. So that's our Arkansas cadre of Arkansas refuges. So
I was going to say, it sounds more like it's a North Arkansas Refuge Complex, not a Central Arkansas Refuge Complex.
well, you could say that. Yeah, for sure.
I wanted to quickly circle back to 2 questions in the chat, if you don't mind. How many species of waterfowl eat the rice that you have put out? Or do they all eat the rice?
I want to say all of them, but I don't want to, speak out of, I don't want to say something incorrectly. I'm trying to think of what waterfowl would be here that would not eat the rice. Most of them are pretty opportunistic, and a mallard will eat minnows or rice or acorns or snails or worms or whatever it can come across. So our big species that we have are mallards and pintails. We have probably the highest concentration of pintails in mid to late December as you'd find anywhere. We get, it's just seems to be, for whatever reason, the pintails are fond of the refuge, but it's primary stopover for pintails. And so, but pintails, mallards, widgeons, gadwall, we get, if we've got the water early in the year, and you guys have seen it, we'll have tons of blue-winged teal. There's quite a few blue-winged teal now, and Mr. Terry Butler left me a message yesterday about the cinnamon teal that was spotted the last few days. So yeah, I think all the birds, there's some divers maybe that aren't in there that are utilizing scaup, and every once in a while we get a few canvasbacks and ringneck ducks. But yeah, pretty much everything's going after the rice.
And then also the other question was, where can you go to find the river otters on the refuge?
Well, I don't know. Probably somebody on the call would know better than I would. I would look for permanent water would be the first place I would look, and then along Overflow Creek that runs pretty much north all the way through the south part of the refuge. It kind of bisects the northern part of the refuge. Overflow Creek does. But wherever you find some water is the best place to start. It's permanent water more than in the fields, for sure. Get in a boat or a kayak, probably. We've got one of the big features in the middle of the refuge is called Pole Break. It's a big cypress tupelo swamp, holds water year round. Be another good place to get out and paddle around. If you'd like to fish, it's great for that, but might be a good spot to spot a river otter.
Hi, I've got a question. And we tuned in late, so you might have addressed this early, but I was wondering about the avian flu. I know that it hit a number of the geese and ducks out there, maybe in November, December. And I wondered what kind of monitoring and retrieval, if you did, any kind of tests that you ran, and are you seeing any ongoing problem? Because I have heard that it's really spreading out west right now. So I don't know if there's anything going on here anymore.
Yeah, you're right. We had one of the most severe outbreaks that I've witnessed on the refuge this year. And we reported when we saw birds, but we were instructed not to collect any birds, to leave everything where it was. So we did not collect any. We know it was avian flu. There were birds that were collected in Arkansas and in surrounding areas. And it's just something that runs through a population of densely populated birds. It hit the geese more than it hit the ducks. The geese were here early. Geese tend to group up in bigger numbers, tighter flocks. I don't know the mechanism that avian flu spreads, if it's more prolific among geese because of their foraging habits or just because of their larger flocks. But yeah, we saw quite a few dead and dying snow geese earlier in the year. I don't remember. Might have seen just a handful of ducks, but I might have. I don't know for sure. I might have seen over 100 snow geese though this year that were either dead or dying. So it kind of came through and it kind of ran its course, and then on up into December we weren't seeing it anymore. It seemed like it had kind of done its thing, and I haven't seen any evidence that we're still dealing with it. So, and I'm certainly not an expert on avian influenza, but yeah, we saw a pretty good outbreak this year. It was pretty rough. And I mean, there were reports of geese like in the schoolyard at Bald Knob, and that's just a spillover of the high concentrations that we had on the refuge, and those birds were just kind of falling out in different places around us. So Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, Paul. This is Karen again. Logan Cave. I don't know much about it. Never been there. I know are you studying the bats there for white nose?
Well, so we have, it's the gray bat that's at Logan Cave, and Logan Cave is not what they call a hibernaculum, I think is the right word. I'm not a bat expert either. I know a little bit about it. So they're not hibernating in Logan Cave, and areas where bats hibernate and the white nose syndrome, that's where you start having real issues, because it's my understanding that and for anybody that doesn't know, white nose syndrome is a fungus that forms on the nose of bats while they hibernate. And what it does basically is it disturbs the bat out of their hibernation. They kind of come out of their hibernation, they get up, they fly out, and it's in the wintertime, and there's no food resources available. And so this repeated disturbance out of their hibernation is what eventually just drains all their energy reserves and it's what's causing their population decline. The cave at Holla Bend is pup rearing. It's I forget what the proper term is for that, but they're having pups in that cave. So we don't see any issues with white nose syndrome and the gray bats at Logan Cave. So no, that's not a problem. There's no public use at Logan Cave. It's strictly, like Chris said earlier, it's threatened and endangered species. We got the gray bat. We have a fish called the Ozark cave fish, and then the Ozark crawfish. And these are all, basically blind crawfish and cave fish that live in this system. And folks from ES and maybe the Nature Conservancy usually go in annually or every other year and do a monitoring of those populations. And then there's a fly out count that's done at Logan Cave for the gray bats. They monitor TNC and ES. They may do the monitoring of those populations. It's just so far, it's almost 4 hours for us to get over there. And it's one of those places that's just kind of out on the frontier for us. And we don't get over there a lot. We do keep up with it, but there's not any real intensive management that's going on there. We're just maintaining that cave and protecting that habitat.
All right, we have time for one more question. Anyone want to unmute yourselves or type in chat? All right, I'll ask one more then. So what are the rules that you want us birders to know when we visit Bald Knob?
Wow, that's what are the rules? Rule number one would be come to the refuge and enjoy it. That's the main thing. That's you guys are really one of my favorite groups of people. When you manage public lands, there are groups of people that are a joy to deal with, and there are other groups of people that are more of a challenge. You guys are always a joy, y'all. Y'all are very complimentary of what we do, and you're not tearing things up, and you're there to enjoy the resource, and just really thrilled when you guys are around. And I mean that sincerely. Just pay attention to the signs. Don't go on any roads when they're wet and muddy is the big thing, that we don't have to go pull anybody out of the ditch and things like that. Don't block the roads. That's the, when the farming gets cranked up and we're trying to get tractors moved around, just pull over to the side and let folks by. But other than that, you guys are some of my favorites for sure.
Wow. Well, thanks for that, Paul. I appreciate you and the hard work that you put into managing Bald Knob and the other refuges. And thanks, Chris, for all the work you're doing managing the staff and keeping them on target and helping meet regional and national conservation goals. We all appreciate it, and all things you do for the birds. And thank you for taking your time out tonight to talk to us about the work that you're doing. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. And we're going to turn to the business portion of our meeting. You're welcome to stay and learn more about what Audubon Society of Central Arkansas does, including upcoming field trips.
All right. Well, it was nice visiting with y'all. Stop by the office. If we're there, we'll have the office
Yes.
open for you. We've got a visitor center, and we try to have the restrooms open for you guys when you come through. And thanks for having us. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all, and it was great to see everyone. I'm gonna turn off the camera and mute my mic and just sit back and listen. So you guys have a great evening.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add, just thank you so much. Such a passionate group. I love the smiles. I love your interest. We love your support, importantly. So if I could add rule number 3, it is, help us by being a great advocate for the refuge system. We need more friends than ever, and tell the people out in the public how much you love the work that's going on. We need that help out there. So thank you so much for your interest and for your passion, and please stop by and see us. So thank you.